Saradama and Nandaji from Ramana Maharshi Center of Learning, Bangalore. So I don't think there's any, they don't need any introduction from me. So I don't want to talk more. Let's hand over the session to Saradama and Nandaji. Saradama, please take over.
Namo Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have all been drawn to his feet and we have been able to gather together. All the devotees have been able to gather together today in the meditation on his life and teachings. எனக்கென்ன வேண்டும் என்ன வேண்டாம் என்பதை எல்லாம் என்னை விட நன்கறிந்தோன் எம்பெருமானே. தன்னை வேண்டும் அன்பர் தந்தை தாயுமானானே. பின்னையார் பின்பே வேண்டும் பிள்ளையாம் நானே. எனக்கென்ன வேண்டும் என்ன வேண்டாம் என்பதை எல்லாம் என்னை விட நன்கறிந்தோன் எம்பெருமானே. நான் நினைத்தறிவதென்றால் நியாயமாகுமா? ஸ்ரீரமணன் இச்சை அன்றி ஏதும் நல்லதாகுமா? தான் நினைத்தறிவன் கேட்போன் தாசனாகுமா? சர்வமும் அறிந்தோன் செய்கை தப்புமாகுமா? எனக்கென்ன வேண்டும் என்ன வேண்டாம் என்பதை எல்லாம் என்னை விட நன்கறிந்தோன் எம்பெருமானே. எம்பெருமானே எம்பெருமானே. Bhagavan, we all call him, the devotees, old devotees say, we all call him Bhagavan. We call him Bhagavan. Why do we call him Bhagavan? Because he is the Supreme One. And we don't need to go into the definition, even though there is a definition of Bhagavan and the definition perfectly fits our Bhagavan Ramana. We don't need to go into the definition because when he enters a life, he automatically makes his presence felt in it as the Supreme, as the one who is taking care of our lives totally, in every way, whether or not we are able to accept it fully. See, even when our parents are bringing us up, they are actually completely in charge of our lives, at least until a certain age. Until we come of a certain age, surely they are the ones who have to take care of us. They are not capable of taking care of ourselves. Sri Nandakumarji, when he was talking about the life of cow Lakshmi, he said, Bhagavan had this way. Usually, anyone brought, it could be cow Lakshmi first, later it was Valli, or probably around the same time or earlier, Valli the deer came. And then there was the white peacock, which was brought and given to Bhagavan. Usually Bhagavan would say, we don't want him or her here. Who will take care of her? Who will take care of this Lakshmi, who was a calf, and the mother cow? Who will take care of them? Bhagavan asked. How can we take care of them over here in the ashram? However, the devotee refused to take them back. Now, at this point of time, of course, by Bhagavan's own plan, but in the Leela, how it appeared that Ramanatha Brahmachari said, I will take care of the cow and the calf. He had no experience in taking care of the cow and the calf. Many young parents also may not have experience in taking care of their children. But there is a love. There is a love. And so Nandakumarji says, through this, Bhagavan pointed out to us that when parents are there, parents are ready to accept the responsibility of one jiva, then God allows that being to come into the world. Somebody needs to be there to take care of that being. Somebody needs to be there. If it is a tree which is planted, we say that the gardener waters the plant, waters the tree, waters the sapling, protects it with a fence until it becomes a big tree, after which it is capable of taking care of itself. So up till that point, our parents take care of us. And it is not necessary that we understand their care, but they still take care of us. When we are very young, when we are infants, then there is total surrender. So Kanakamma, she was explaining Bhagavan's verse in Arunachala Navamani Malai. It says, Sirana Shonagiri Sirakavarum Chitswarupana Miraye Siriyanentan பேரான பிழையெல்லாம் பொறுத்து காத்து பின்னும் இவன் பாழிதனில் வீழா வண்ணம் காரான கருணை விழி கொடுப்பாய் இன்றேல் கடும்பவத்தினின்று கரையேற மாட்டேன் நேரானதுண்டோ தாய் சிசுவுக்காற்றும் நிகரற்ற நலனுக்கு நிகழ்த்துவாயே. Take care of me the way a mother takes care of her infant. And Kanakamma had said, when once we met her in her room, she very sweetly, she explained, she said, Bhagavan has said, Thai Sishuva Katrum. A Shishu is an infant, a child in arms, a baby in arms. So, Bhagavan says, like a mother shows love to a baby in arms because the mother also feels complete need to support that baby, because that baby at that stage is totally dependent on her. It does not have any other recourse, any other thought, any other way, any other means. So it is totally surrendered to her, and such a baby will automatically be taken care of by the mother. So if we are able to surrender like that to Bhagavan, then he automatically takes care of us. But even otherwise, he will take care of us. But only thing is, what he does is that when our intellect starts growing, when our surrender starts diminishing, when questions begin to rise in our mind, any question rises in the mind, it is a questioning of the Supreme alone. If I question my father, my mother, my world, my friends, my boss, when I question, that means my intellect is functioning. And I am thinking something is right, something is wrong. I am judging. So when the judging factor arises in me, then Bhagavan points out, yes, your intellect is growing. So what should you do? Actually, finally, one has to surrender. But how does one surrender? One can practice partial surrender. Or if one's intellect is very strong, then Bhagavan says, practice self-inquiry. That self-inquiry will automatically make the mind ready to surrender. By surrendering every thought, by that process which Bhagavan explains, self-inquiry actually prepares us for surrender. Surrender, total surrender is the ultimate, which Bhagavan shows us in his life also. But if we are not ready, how do we prepare ourselves for that total surrender, which is not different from jnana? That absolute surrender is not different from absolute avoidance in the self. So one can prepare oneself through the surrender itself. One can prepare oneself through partial surrender as well. And one can prepare oneself through the vichara. So that's why, out of compassion for all of us, Bhagavan has given us this path of Atma Vichara, this path of self-inquiry, which allows us to question the might of our own intellect and get prepared to surrender even that mighty intellect to him who is actually shining ever as the inner mother, the mother of consciousness. Bhagavan says, Chinmayi, that mother who is ever giving us great love. So now let us go into the path of Atma Vichara a bit for some time with Nanda Kumar ji, before again dwelling a little more on Bhagavan's life.
Namo Raghunath. In our previous satsang, I'm not sure how many of us are meeting again. We had started off by reading Bhagavan's teachings in the work, Who Am I? We had, I think, seen through the first 3 questions with the preamble. So we'll have a brief look at that before going ahead with Bhagavan's teachings in the work. As Akka said, Atma Vicharam can be considered as the practice of surrender, the practice of Atma Samarpana, the surrender of the ego, because unless the mind is surrendered, the ego is not available for surrender. Therefore, Bhagavan asks us to let go of each thought, which is the mind. This thought is mind. So let go of the mind so that the I is available for surrender. The Atma Samarpanam is completed by inquiring, who am I? Who else can we inquire to except the ever-present self? So we go back and have a look at what we had seen in the last week, Bhagavan's all-encompassing preamble. Who am I? As all living beings desire to be happy always without misery. And as in the case of everyone, there is observed a supreme love for oneself. Bhagavan's preamble is so all-encompassing. He says, all living beings, for our sake, he encompasses the living beings. All living beings seek to be happy always. The umbrella that Bhagavan gives is that the happiness should not be for some time and then mixed up with some kind of sorrow or misery. Always and without a trace of misery. One calls it as unalloyed happiness. In Buddhism, we find this unalloyed, that there is nothing alloyed with the Supreme Being, because there is nothing other than the Supreme Being for it to be alloyed with, for it to be mixed with. Therefore, Supreme Being is always pure, is always Punyan. Therefore, it is that happiness which is without a trace of misery. All living beings seek to be happy always without a trace of misery. And in all living beings, Bhagavan says, see a love for, a supreme love for oneself. Now, this is very interesting in the sense that usually we call it as selfishness. But Bhagavan says that is what is there, that whatever the self may be identifying with, there is great love for that. Why Bhagavan makes it clear? Happiness alone is the cause for love. That means that why do we love the I so much? Because inside the I, the Supreme is lying hidden, like the sweetness within honey, says Kanakamara. Like the sweetness is hidden within honey, the Supreme Being lies hidden within the I thought, giving life to the I thought. That is why all of us have this supreme love for oneself. Sadhguru Swamigal goes ahead and proves, even in those cases where we call it as we love helping others, Sadhguru Swamigal says it is only that your happiness lies in that. Still, if it were to be an unhappy activity for you, you would not pursue it. Therefore, there also there is a supreme love for oneself, says Sadhguru Swamigal. So every living being seeks to be happy without a trace of sorrow. In all beings, there is seen a supreme love for oneself. Why this love for oneself is there? As Bhagavan says, inside the I of Hariyaditara Jivara, Ahavarisa Guhayil, inside the cave of the I, Arivayirami Paramatma. That Paramatma is shining within the I of every living being from Hari onwards, says Bhagavan. Now, happiness alone is the cause for that love. Bhagavan says, this happiness is experienced by every living being. He doesn't say this happiness is experienced only by tapasvis, only by saints, only by great sadhakas. He opens up that happiness is experienced by the unalloyed, ever-present happiness is experienced by everyone in their deep sleep, where there is no mind. In deep sleep, where there is no mind, everyone experiences that. Therefore, to experience that happiness, one should know oneself sans the mind. One should know one's true nature without even the presence of the mind. To do this, the who am I or self-enquiry is the direct means, says Bhagavan. To free oneself of the mind and see one's true nature, which is ever free of the mind. Who am I? The self-enquiry is the best means, says Bhagavan in the preamble. The first question posed by Sivaprakasham Pillai to Bhagavan. Sivaprakasham Pillai is already a student of philosophy. He is working in government in those days, and he has come to Bhagavan to clear his doubts. And he asks, "Who am I?" This particular answer, these are all recompiled by Sivaprakash Pillai and sent back to Bhagavan, and they are recomposed into this work in the early 1920s. Is the account regarding formation of the work. So this particular answer covers the Panchakoshas. The first answer covers the Panchakoshas, where Bhagavan says that to the answer to the question, who am I? Bhagavan says, I am not the physical body made of the Saptadhatus. I am not the Karmendriyas. I am not the Jnanendriyas. I am not the Panchaprana, the 5 types of breath which had 5 types of actions. I am not the mind. I am not even the ignorance of deep sleep without work, which is filled with vasanas, which is filled with proclivities, which prevent being conscious of our true nature. So I am not the physical body, I am not the Karmendriyas, I am not the Jnanendriyas, I am not the Panchaprana, I am not the Manas, and I am not the nascience of deep sleep. Then Sivaprakash Pillai asks, if I am not all this, if I am able to understand that I am not this, who am I? Then Bhagavan says that I am that consciousness which has freed itself from each of these by saying Neti Neti and is able to stand alone and is able to stand by itself as self-focused self. What is the nature of this? What is the nature of the self? Is the third question. And Bhagavan says the nature of the self is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is answer to the first part in the preamble, that everyone seeks to be happy always. So Sat is ever existent. Chit is unless you are conscious of your existence, such an existence is no existence. Therefore, second is the Chitta. And what we seek as happiness is the nature of self, Ananda. Of course, all these three, Sat Chit Ananda, are not separate attributes. The very nature of the self then the question asked is, when will I realize this self? To that Bhagavan says, this world, which is the Drishya, when it vanishes, when it is removed, that is when you will be able to realize the self. Now, the question then is, can't we realize the self even when the world is seen, even when the world is, within brackets, taken to be real? Even when we take this world to be real, can't we experience the self? So that is the question we are going to focus a little bit today. Bhagavan's answer to that is, we cannot. We cannot take both the world that is seen and the self both to be real. Because that which is seen, the Drishya, is like the snake superimposed on the actuality or the truth of a rope. This snake and rope analogy is something very famously and constantly used in Vedanta. So we should not tire. We should clearly understand this, that if you are able to see one, you will not be able to see the other. If you are able to see the other, you are not seeing the first one. That means the analogy is that when you are going in the evening towards your home, you actually see something wound up and you are afraid that it is a snake. But on putting on the torch and looking closely, you find that it's only a rope. Similar is the case with the seen world and the Atma, the self, says Bhagavan. This is something called as Drishya Viveka. Viveka means, let us have a look at what is this Viveka. Why Viveka and Vairagya are given so much importance. Bhagavan says, now, though self is there, it is not able to reveal itself, or we are not able to experience it, because the self and the non-self are now in a state of coalesce or attachment. It is like the fire that is lit on an iron ball, says Bhagavan. The fire being consciousness, the iron ball being the Drishya or the scene. The scene itself is seen to be full of consciousness. Whereas with Viveka, we have to extract the consciousness from the inert. How this Viveka is done, Bhagavan says, that which is seen and that which is the seer, Drik, seer is the Drik, seen is the Drishya. Between these two, the truth of the self has to be looked for or sought in the seer, not in the seen. The seen is interpretable. This is easily understandable by us. We all have a lunch. If at the end of the lunch, we chance upon something we like of all the dishes, then the memory records that the whole lunch was very good, irrespective of how the things went. That is how the memory works. But suppose we have had really a good lunch of many items, but towards the end, we have had something has been put and we have consumed it which is not liked by us, then how that experience is recorded in our memory is that that food was not all right. That is the memory we will be carrying. Now, this is the limited way in which the Drishya is interpreted by our seeing nature. That is why Bhagavan says, don't rely on this. This sight is always lopsided. One more instance of how the Drishya is so limited. Bhagavan is accosted by a devotee who is going up the hill. He is desperately seeking Bhagavan, who has gone up the hill for his evening walk. And he is so happy that Bhagavan is coming down. And he falls at Bhagavan's feet and says, how happy I am, I have had your darshan. Then Bhagavan, he must have been an old devotee, because Bhagavan holds him and alerts him. Why don't you say that you gave me darshan? See, in the scene, whatever we say about the scene is only one particular point of view. The same event can be viewed from different angles, making each angle unreliable in itself, because there are many ways in which the same event could have been told. So Bhagavan alerts us by saying that, why didn't you say you gave me darshan? That is why the drishya has to be dropped and the drik, the seer, has to be held to find the supreme truth. How this process is done? That the world is the drishya, or the pot is the drishya, then the drik, the seer of that, is the eye. The variabilities in the world is seen by one eye. That the eye is functioning well, not functioning well, is seen by the mind. So the variations in the eye are seen by mind. So drop the eye. Drop the eye means not only the eye, but all the karmendriyas and the other jnanendriyas. The not I, which Bhagavan said, I am not the physical body, I am not the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. So the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas are known by the mind. Hold the mind now to drop that. To drop the mind, Bhagavan gives us Atma Vicharam. How to drop the mind? When mind is nothing but a collection of thoughts, all arising after the rising of the I thought. So Bhagavan says, as soon as a thought arises as a drishya, don't follow it. The same thought can be interpreted in many ways. So it is unreal, drop it. For whom is this thought? It will always be for me. then who am I if you ask? The relative seer of the ego is taken to the real seer, the self. The I thought returns to its source, and the thought that arose, the Drishya Jagat, it falls away. We have already dropped the physical body, we have dropped the Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, now we are dropping the thoughts also. So the I, which is the ego, now returns to its source, the real seer. Will it remain there? Bhagavan says, may not be, because there may be other proclivities and vasanas to push. Then again, wait at that doorstep. Wait at that doorstep as it pushes into another thought. Drop it. Enquire for whom is this thought. It will always be for me. Who am I? With repeated practice, Bhagavan assures, one gains the ability to remain with the truth, to remain with the rope, to remain with the sadvastu, not be carried away into the drishya. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit and practice. Our experience with the Atma Ucharan is that whether it is conducted in a room or across the world, Bhagavan connects us. Bhagavan doesn't have time or place. So, and we are all devotees of Bhagavan. So, with Bhagavan's grace connecting all of us, let us sit together in Atma Ucharan. As thoughts arise, let us not pursue them, but clearly inquire, for whom is this thought? This thought is for me. Who am I? Takes us back to this thought. Let us sit for 10 minutes, Atma. I will hand over back to Sarvata.
Namo Ramana. In the beginning of the sharing today, we saw Bhagavan telling us about Sadhu Om Swami and Bhagavan telling us about the beauty of surrender. And then we went on to see Bhagavan revealing to us the beauty of inquiry. So let us just have a look at two instances in Bhagavan's life. One, therein we see his surrender. Actually, the entire life of Bhagavan is nothing but a story of surrender to Arunachala. It is just that. But then we can see there are some instances where there was in Bhagavan's life the highlighting of self-inquiry as well. And I thought that we can just dwell upon two instances in his childhood. One instance when he was very young. Maybe he was 3 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And he was a favorite for all the people in Tiruchuri, loved by everyone, loving everyone, a very loving child, always caring for everyone, helping everyone, very naturally good at everything that he did. So there was no occasion that he could be scolded or found fault with. But then Bhagavan, in that Leela, there was this instance when he picked up his father's case papers. His father was a vakeel, a pleader, a lawyer, a kind of a lawyer, that is, they say in those days, who was called a pleader. And he obviously had a lot of his court cases with him, a lot of papers. And this young child, just as he thinks that all our papers which we have gathered over so many years in our life, in our memory, so many cases which we have built up, so many cases which we think are plus and minus, we have stored away in our memories cupboard, isn't it? So this little boy saw all these papers and he said, what use are all these papers? Let's have some fun with them. And so he made, some people say now that he made paper boats out of them. Earlier I have heard a version where it was said that he made some kites out of them. Whatever it is, he let them fly away or he let them float away as the meaningless, some case papers, some old papers which was filed away, as if to tell us that all the memories that we have filed away can all be sent away as paper boats or as let to fly away as kites, and then we can be free. But then the father was not very happy with what he did, obviously, Sundaram, and Bhagavan got scolded. He got severely scolded for his action, for his mischief, as they say, He played some mischief. Vesamam, we say in Tamil. And little children, even if they do something normal, parents will say they are very mischievous. If they are alert and active and they pick up something from somewhere and keep it somewhere else, they don't understand why a thing is in a particular place and they might pick it and keep it somewhere else. Or they may repeat an action which we do and parents think, oh, they are very mischievous. So anyway, Bhagavan got scolded. So what did he do? What did Bhagavan do when he got scolded as a little boy? He disappeared from home. They were searching for him high and low, and they got worried because he sometimes would venture into the temple tank, and the tank had, it had whirlpools. That's why it's called a Tiruchuri. So they were worried as to where the boy had gone, but they couldn't find him. But late in the evening, the temple priest discovered him in the temple behind the idol of Sahayamba and asked him, "Why did you come here?" And he said that, "Because father scolded me, I came to Amma, I came to my mother." And he did not go to Mother Azhagamma. He went to Sahayamba. Because he himself says in his composition, again in Navamani Malai, he says, "Ammayum appanumai yennai bhumiyil aaki alittu." Oh Arunachala, you as mother and father created me in this world, on this earth, and then you saved me from falling into the ocean of delusion and kept me at your feet. So we imagined in our production, one of our productions on Bhagavan's life, we imagined a little conversation between Bhagavan and Sahayamba. And Sahayamba, Bhagavan is upset, and Sahayamba says, "Why are you upset? Why are you crying? What is that?" And he says, "Father scolded me." So she says, were you up to some mischief? Were you naughty? I didn't do anything. I only took my father's papers and I made kites and boats out of them. Can you do that without his permission? Well, if something is father's, is it not mine as well? The little child asks Sahayamba. So then mother smiles and says, "Of course, everything that belongs to father is yours. But you see, father wants to give you a much, much greater treasure. He wants to give you, the father of the universe, my child, wants to give you his entire treasure. So what are you concerned with these little case papers?" So we have Bhagavan showing to us that it is not a worldly recourse. Even as a child, he did not go to anyone else. He went directly to the Divine Mother. And what did he do over there? He just stayed there the whole day, sitting behind the idol of Sahayamba, absolutely silently. He didn't make any noise. He didn't speak or anything. He didn't even cry. He was just simply sitting in a meditative posture behind Sahayamba. So there Bhagavan teaches us that whenever we face any problem, instead of addressing the problem, we can surrender to the Divine One, to Bhagavan, and let him just be quiet with him. Just stay with him. Just try to stay with him. Telling him, "Yes, I am in pain, but then it's up to you." So that is one thing, one way which Bhagavan shows us. And the other which he showed us was when his father, Sundaramayyar, passed away. Then he was a boy of 12. And then he saw that everyone was weeping. And then again, he did not go to his mother or his relatives. He probably wondered why they are weeping. He might have asked, he might have said that it looks like father is asleep, because he did think it looks like father is asleep. There's no difference between this, my father who is here, and everyone is weeping for this father, and the father whom I have seen asleep every day. So what's the difference? And then he kept quiet and he watched and he inquired. Here he inquired as they took the father's body, they took it to the crematorium, they cremated the body. And then he thought to himself, if the body was my father, nobody would have cremated it. Nobody would have cremated it. And neither could my father have withstood being cremated. He would have got up and said, "Why on earth are you burning me? I mean, it's burning." He didn't say anything. So this body is not and was not, if it is not now, automatically it was not my father. That which was my father's I, has now left the body. But he says he thought my I is still within this body. But at that point of time, he didn't pursue the inquiry further to ask, who is this I within me? He didn't ask, but he recognized even at that moment the first step which Nandakumarji was talking to us about, of recognizing I am not this body. Nobody is the body. Not I am not the body. My father was not the body. Therefore, I am also not the body. None of us is the body. There is something which says I within every one of us. So Bhagavan's life, every incident in Bhagavan's life sanctifies the twin. Muruganar Swami says, the twin wings of a bird. In practice, Muruganar Swami says, Bhakti and Jnana are like two wings of a bird. It cannot fly with one wing. It is a whole. It is a whole. So Bhagavan's Jnana, Vichara and Bhagavan's Bhakti, they just come together. And if somebody is devoted to him, they will automatically practice his teachings because they are devoted to him. So what else should we do when we are devoted to him but to follow the path which he asks us to follow? And if one is doing self-inquiry, automatically love for Bhagavan will be formed in their heart. If they do not have a natural devotion towards him, and if they start rather through the inquiry, because we connect only to Bhagavan within through the inquiry, automatically the seeds of love within us will start sprouting. That's why Bhagavan has given us these twin paths. And even when he talks of self-inquiry, he talks of who am I and whence am I? From where do I arise? What is my source? Which is that being, that supreme being from which I arise? Or who am I? So either one of the ways Bhagavan tells us of the inquiry also, the bhakti and the jnana, which go hand in hand. And he blesses our lives with these experiences in the right time, in the right manner, to the right extent. And therefore, we can just remain comfortable like the baby in arms, which he talks about in the Navamanimale. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Ma. Is there any question from anyone? Any questions from anyone before we close the satsang?
Can I ask something?
Yes, please.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank both Saratama and Nandakumarji for today and for the Thursday and Friday satsangs which I watch normally from Ramana Center in Bengaluru. So for the many inspired times that I've had with your satsangs, there's just one question I'd like to ask. If you could help me understand, what does that word mean, aware of awareness?
This is actually a very traditional concept. Bhagavan, he refers to that as a teaching from Arunagirinadar, a saint hundreds of years ago in Tiruvannamalai only. He says that the Supreme is Arivai Ariyum Arivu. Arivai, Ariyum, Arivu. Awareness, that is aware of awareness. But see, the fact is, the moment thoughts are transcended, we cannot explain. We cannot. Are you able to hear me? Is there any problem in hearing?
No, I can. No, yes.
Yeah. See, the very practice of Atma Vicharan is that we free the consciousness of the association with thoughts. You are clear with that, isn't it?
Mhm.
The moment we are freeing consciousness from its association with the media, it is aware of itself. It is aware of itself. The consciousness is aware of itself,
Yeah.
or that consciousness is witnessing itself.
Yeah.
Previously, it was engaging in thoughts. It was witnessing thoughts, so that thoughts could be let go of. Now that thoughts are not there, the awareness is aware of itself. This is what Bhagavan explains to Maharani as the darshan of God.
As the
It is darshan, it is the seeing of God.
Mm.
The Maharani asks, how am I to see God in everyone? Bhagavan says, see, now I am seeing you. To see you is a mental operation, Bhagavan says. And to imagine God in you is another mental operation. Therefore, in this manner, we cannot see God in everyone, he says. To see God in everyone, I have to see God within me. The consciousness within, purged of the mind, purged of all thoughts, is felt as God, he says. That means is felt as God. The consciousness within, purged of mind, as Akka said, nobody is the body, nobody is their emotions, nobody is their thoughts, nobody is their ajnana. Everybody is only this, and there is no need to have two experiences. Just abiding in that awareness of awareness itself is darshan. You can realize, just like we are seeing Bhagavan with his eyes, the photograph, we will be having the darshan of God. It is the purna darshan of God. Bhagavan says that awareness which is free of thoughts is felt. He is actually taking us by hand and making us see God as God is. He is making us the seeing of we as we are, is the seeing of God as He is. He is the seeing of anybody as they actually are. We imagine they are so and so, they are related to us like this, but that is only seeing the snake. To see the rope, all one has to do is make the awareness be aware of itself. It is also called awareness of eternal existence. The awareness is aware of its eternal being. So these are various ways in which it is indicated, whereas it can never be explained because there is no thought there. It has to be only directly experienced. Aparoksha anubhuti, they say. Aparoksha anubhuti means direct experience. You have to be that. Ulladu unara, unarvu verinmayum, ulladu unarvagum. Your own nature is that awareness of awareness. There you are having darshan directly, absolutely free of doubts, absolutely free of thoughts. You are having darshan of everyone in their true being when you are having darshan of yourself in your true being. That is referred to as awareness of awareness. These are all ways of pointing out that direct experience.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nandaji. Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess.
Can I ask one?
Yes, yes. Yes, Usha.
Namaskaram. I'd like to know Bhagwan's teaching. Bhagwan says, be as you are. I'd like to know how to be as you are and how to hold on to the I thought, because we are so mixed with the worldly affairs that when I want to go internal within myself, how should I hold on to the I and be as you are? Thank you.
first thing, Amma, you said we realize we are mixed up with other things, right? So that's the first grace which Bhagavan has given to us. So when we say, if we realize we are mixed up with other things, that means we realize the demarcation between the other and ourselves. Even without our realizing it, even without your realizing it in your very statement. So all it takes is to be attentive to that which is happening within us. First step which Bhagavan says is to be attentive to the mind. Right? Our own mind. When we start looking at our own mind, what do we find over there? We find thoughts, isn't it? We automatically find thoughts. But then we do not go further into the inquiry. We do not try to look at these thoughts and recognize that these are thoughts and they are not I myself. See, when I have a thought, say if I'm feeling sad, right? Now what am I? I'm constantly, my attention is I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling sad. Now I do not divide it and say, okay, I am feeling sad, right? And some time ago, I was not feeling sad. Sometime afterwards, I may not be feeling sad. So I may be feeling something else. So there are two parts to my present experience. One is the sadness, and one is I, who am now completely identified with that sadness. Next moment, if something makes me happy, then I am completely identified. As you said, I am mixed up with that sadness. I am mixed up with that happiness. I'm mixed up with every experience of mine. But the fact is that I'm only mixed up. I'm not that. Isn't it? So while every experience happens as a thought, when it rises as a thought, how does an experience come to us? How does sorrow come to us? How does joy come to us? How does anger come to us? How does any experience come to us? It comes to us, Bhagavan says, as a thought. So what we have to do is, when we have a thought, and if we can do it better when we sit down for our self-inquiry, but we can do it at any time as well. But when we sit down for our self-inquiry, we are able to see the rising of the thoughts one after another. And therefore, we are able to see, oh, now one more thought is arisen. And Bhagavan says, ask yourself, for whom is this thought? Isn't it? That's what he asks us to ask. He says, for whom is this thought? For whom is this thought of sorrow? For whom is this thought of joy? For whom is this thought? If I ask myself, for whom is this thought? What answer will we get if we ask ourselves? We will automatically get the answer. It is for me. It is my thought. Now, this is a great revelation which Bhagavan has given us, because at that very moment, I know it is my thought. It is not I. The moment the answer comes to me, it is my thought. Already he has freed us from that. To some extent, the mixing up has stopped, isn't it? The moment the answer comes, it is my thought. The mixing up has stopped. So I get separated. But what can happen is, next moment, before I get separated, before I can establish in that awareness that I am separated, I can go off into another thought, which usually happens. So Bhagavan says, repeat it. Repeat the process. Again, ask yourself, for whom is this thought? And when the answer comes for me, if by his grace, it strikes me, oh, if this thought is for me, I am not that thought. When that strikes me, then Bhagavan says, don't stop there. Now hold the time. Now hold it. Because you've now recognized it is not the thought. But you don't know, because you have been so mixed up, you don't know who it is. So ask yourself, who am I? Put that question, he says, ask yourself, who am I? The moment you get the answer, it is my thought. I'm not the thought, but who am I? So I'm not the thought, right? I am not any thought which happens. I'm not any of the thoughts, but who am I? Because I'm not able to stay with that experience of I-ness without getting mixed up. Why? Because of my habit of being mixed up, that's all. Because of my habit of going with thoughts all the time, I'm not able to have the strength. That's what Bhagavan says in Akshara Manamalai. Dheeramil agattil thedi undanayan thirumba uttren arul. I don't have the courage. I don't have the courage to hold on. But by practice, Bhagavan says, we get the courage to hold on to the inquiry. And gradually what happens is, it is no longer a question, for whom is this thought? It is no longer a verbal internal question, but very clearly we will know this is a thought. Oh, this is a thought which has arisen. This is a thought which is rising up now in my mind. And it is not I. It is a thought which I'm observing, which I'm experiencing. And then I'm following it. I'm mixing up with it. So we understand what it is to come back from it, to separate ourselves from that experience, from every experience as an end it rises. And by His grace, the more we do this, automatically, every time when we ask ourselves the question, who am I? Because we are not linking with any thought. When we ask ourselves, who am I? What am I answering? I'm not giving any answer, isn't it? I'm just trying to see. I'm just trying to see who I am. I'm just trying to experience it. So since there's no answer, that silence which is Bhagavan within us, it gradually reveals itself. It slowly reveals itself to us. Sometimes by its power or because of the previous experience or janma, somebody gets it automatically by His grace. Somebody gets it all at once. They're able to feel that presence within, without the body also. There are people, many by Bhagavan's grace. So then they can just hold on to that experience. They don't even have to ask, for whom is this thought and who am I? They can go directly to that experience and stay with that experience. That's what Bhagavan says. But if we are still at a point where we're getting mixed up with thoughts, then we have the need for this tool which He gives us of asking, for whom is this thought? Then the answer comes, the thought is for me. Then who am I? When we ask this repeatedly, gradually, Bhagavan allows that the erosion of all our thoughts and all our tendencies, and that presence reveals itself. And then after that, we can remain, be as you are, which He says it is possible for us at that point of time.
Usha?
Can I also use the I as like a mantra for me to be attentive? Keep mentioning.
Yes, Bhagavan. Yes, Nandakumar.
Can I?
Yes, very much so. Bhagavan says you can use it. There is one instance of a lady devotee. Her name was Premavati Khanna. She was a housewife and she told Bhagavan, you are talking about self-inquiry. And I am a housewife. I have number of children. I have to take care of so many things. I don't understand the self-inquiry, nor do I have the time for it. What do I do? Give me some answer. Then Bhagavan says, keep on saying nan, or I. The language does not matter. The language does not matter because whichever language we are used to, we feel the sense of I linked to that. So you may say nan, or I, or whichever language. I said there are plenty of languages. So whatever it is in Hindi, main, whichever is natural to us, we can keep saying it. And Bhagavan also indicates a heart center, a spiritual heart center. So long as we are identified with the body, He says this is a little to the right of this center, which we feel, the center of our chest. A little to the right of that is the spiritual heart center. If possible, we can turn our attention in that direction and keep repeating And that will also take us to the source, Bhagavan says. And he says, I is the first name of God. I is the first name of God. Nan is the first name of God. So that is a mantra for which we do not need Guru Upadesham. Otherwise, we may need. Of course, Bhagavan himself gives his name to some people. So that is the Guru Upadesham happens. But for this is very natural because this is given to everyone, to every human being, isn't it? It is, but the experience will lead you beyond that. It will lead you beyond that saying, because as we are saying, no, because that saying would be a word. It would have the association with language, and therefore language means with this entity. All that is there, but it can be used certainly as a mantra very effectively.
Wonderful sharing, Amma, today.
Thank you.
Surrender and self-inquiry by Nandaji. Nandaji, thank you. So with that, we submit this satsangam again to the holy feet of Bhagavan. So we'll see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Nandaji.
Namo Ramana sir. Thank you for the opportunity.